Mute. Sorry, I just need to unmute there just a moment. Okay. Can everyone see my screen?
Yeah, it's fine, Leonie. Your presentation looks fine.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining this webinar today. We're just going to give you a quick update on FMD. We've promised an FMD refresher and just a general update for MAHs and what's going on. So to give you an outline of the presentation, as I said, a recap of FMD, where are we now, a little bit about our alert management guidance, a little bit about NMVS alerts and connecting to the European Alert Management System. Brexit we've added in, we didn't cover this on Monday, but we had some requests for information, so this is now included. We then have the ask of yourselves as MAHs in terms of working with us in running the IMVS and managing alerts, and then finally just a quick overview of support that's available to you. And as Sarah mentioned, we'll do a Q&A session at the end for anyone who wants to ask any questions. So just very briefly recap FMD. So we start obviously with the Falsified Medicines Directive, FMD. And this is a 2011 directive that was introduced to tackle the growing threat of falsified medicines and ensure the trade in medicines is rigorously controlled. So it came at the so-called problem from a number of perspectives. And the first one was the requirement to introduce obligatory safety features and outer packaging of medicines, so the 2D barcode and the anti-tampering device. Also, we had introduced an EU-wide logo to identify legal online pharmacies and medicines retailers. And here in Ireland, that particular register is operated by the PSI, the pharmacy regulator. So if you look here in the corner, that's the logo that you will see on websites across Europe selling medicines legally. When you click on those websites, it brings you into the relevant national register. We also then had tougher rules and controls and inspections of the producers of APIs, and then finally additional requirements for wholesalers, including extra record keeping. So following on then from the Falsified Medicines Directive, the Commission delegated regulation was published in 2016, setting out more details about safety features, including the obligations of the various parties involved in the process, including NMVOs, manufacturers, MAHs, wholesalers, pharmacies, and hospitals. So we often call that the DR. So I use that term elsewhere in this, but that's the piece of legislation I'm talking about. So just to refresh briefly what the EMVS looks like. So it is effectively a hub and spoke type system. So at the heart of it, we have the European hub, which connects all the national systems are connected to that. You also then have connections from pharmaceutical manufacturers and parallel distributors. So that's where the data is uploaded to the EU hub. That process is managed by the so-called onboarding partners. So that's the part of the company that actually has the contract with IMVO and is responsible for data upload. Now they're doing it under the authority of the marketing authorization holders because that's where the legal responsibility lies. But as you know, the actual handling of the data and the upload may be managed on your behalf by another entity within your corporation. Then looking to specifically the Irish Medicines Verification System, so we're part of the EMVS and we have all the data for the packs that are sold in Ireland in our system, which are sent from the European hub. So we have a connection to the hub. And then connected to our system are all the pharmacies, hospitals and wholesalers who are required to verify and decommission packs in various situations. So we obviously have to go through a fairly rigorous legitimacy check process with all of those to make sure only people who are entitled to be handling packs are actually connected to our system. So one of the questions that we get asked all the time is, have any falsified medicines been detected to date? Now, here in Ireland, the answer is no, we haven't detected any by the IMVS. However, we are aware that not all packs are being scanned and that, so we be 100% sure that there haven't been any falsified medicines. We are aware that across Europe, cases of stolen being used to infiltrate the legal supply chain with fake medicines have been identified from the anti-tamper device check. So this is where, say, hospitals discard packaging for very expensive high-tech type medicines. That packaging then gets diverted, filled with fake medicines and supplied in another market. We are aware that falsified medicines have been identified at wholesaler level by the Czech, Slovakian and Bulgarian national systems. We don't have any details, and it's one of the things I think all the NMVOs and MAHs are discussing, how to improve the information flow and what the system is actually identifying in terms of falsified medicines. I suppose the bottom line is it's important to remember that the European Medicines Verification System is designed primarily as a deterrent. So in terms of numbers of fake medicines in the supply chain, the legal supply chain, these have been low to date, and the idea is to keep it that way. And if we achieve that objective of making the system a deterrent and keeping the counterfeiters out of Europe, low detection rates of falsified medicines will be the norm. I think it's important to note that over 11 billion transactions took place in the system in 2022. Like, it's a phenomenal number of transactions. And I think the consensus is that this is making Europe a very unattractive location for counterfeiters. Even if not every single pack is scanned in every single country, the fact that so many transactions are taking place, it really is proving to be a deterrent. So on the next few slides, I'm just going to talk through the different players involved in FMD in Ireland, and we start with ourselves. So our purpose is to protect Irish patients from falsified medicine. This is taken from our corporate strategy. So our core purpose at the bottom there of the slide is to operate the system. So we are required to operate and manage the system to ensure that all alerts are investigated, and to work with MAHs and the other NMVOs to ensure seamless operation of the MVS. And we do that in many different ways. We have a single change management approval system or change control approval system in place for the entire MVS. We also do a considerable amount of what's called interoperability testing. So if any one national system or any part of the hub is changed, a full round of interoperability testing is done with all parts of the system to make sure that there's no impact. Our second layer of support is, or of activities, to enable and support. So we provide end users. By the term end users, we mean pharmacies, hospitals, and wholesalers, the people who are connected to our system to verify and decommission packs. So we provide the end users and the MAHs with the support and resources they require to use the IMVS and to manage alerts seamlessly. Added value then is the third rung of what we do, and it's something that the board is really thinking about at the moment, the IMVO board. So we're identifying ways in which IMVO and the IMVS can add value for IMVO members, IMVS users, and that would include yourselves, and also for patients. So that's actually a broader discussion that's taking place across Europe. And for example, I'm involved in an EMVS strategy group, which is a number of the NMVOs and MVO participants. And coming the consultations that we've had with NMVOs and with MVO stakeholders, the European organisations, and with our local boards, there's certainly an appetite to think about how the system can add value. Different views and different aspects of that, but I think there is a sense that we need to think about this. So continuing our roles and responsibilities, so if you just summarise what we do, we set up and manage the system, we ensure it operates smoothly as a validated system as part of the MVS. So the validated system is very important. We operate in a GXP environment. We effectively have a GMP, GDP type quality management system in place. We have a lot of resources applied to our quality system. We have a quality manager, and Sarah, as part of her role, she does a lot of work managing documentation within the quality system. We've recently had an MAH audit, and we were very pleased with the output. They looked at our QMS, and we were very pleased with the feedback we got from that audit. We also then support pharmacies, hospitals, and wholesalers to connect to the system and assist with any problems that arise. And that would include things like scanner problems, software issues. We will help them where we can. We work with end users and MAHs to minimise avoidable alerts. So that's a very singular focus that we have, is getting rid of alerts that really don't need to happen. And then finally, and this is taken from the delegated regulation, we provide for the immediate investigation of all alerts that represent potential incidents of falsification. So these are the so-called level 5 alerts. So level 5 alerts are the messages sent to the pharmacy where they're generated, or the MAH. They're sent to ourselves, and then if the alert's in the pharmacy, the MAH for the product also gets the alert. We're also required to ensure that the HPRA, the European Medicines Agency, and the European Commission are notified should a falsification be confirmed. Now, it's not necessarily the case that we will do the notifying, but we just make sure that someone else has done it, typically the MAH. Just some key facts about the system. So we have quite a lot of end users for the size of our population. So we've just under 2,100 end users. We've about 1,900 pharmacies, just over 100 hospitals, 87 wholesalers, and 2 others, and these are private dialysis clinics. We have 380 MAHs registered with IMVO. That seems to be the sort of ballpark number that most NMVOs see. And then finally, we have about 230 million packs per annum are uploaded to our system. And to give you an idea of the market size based on IQVIA data, there would have been 112 million packs last year. So the fact that we have so many data for so many packs uploaded to our system reflects the large number of multi-market packs that we have. Because when you have a multi-market pack, you upload all the data to all the markets where the product is sold. In our case, 65% of our packs are multi-market packs. So just looking at the EMVS generally in terms of performance, the system is very stable and it's performing well. So we're very pleased with where it's at now. And we put a lot of work into stabilizing it and dealing with the little bugs and quirks that were in it. And I think a lot of them have been ironed out now. From an IMVS perspective, we are currently doing 2 releases per year. Our last release went live in May and that was very smooth. We have another release in development with the plan go live of November 23. We're actually already working on the content of release 14, which will be in May next year. So there's quite a long time to plan, do the development work, do all the testing, the validation before a release goes live. We're currently preparing for, we do an annual security audit of our system, and this will be carried out on release 13, starting at the end of September to be done. That release will go into what's called the IQE, or the integrated quality environment, for a period of time before it goes into production environment. We now manage the testing and validation of our national system. We do it as a joint exercise with the other solid soft countries. So there's 12 of them. We have a shared QA resource. We have a consultant working full-time for us as a group. And we also now have several customer group SOPs. So effectively, part of our quality management system is actually managed at solid soft customer group level with the other NMVOs. Very interesting to note that Finland this year have announced that they're actually switching their national system from Arvata to solid soft reply. So that's been quite a big development. And it was always considered that that was quite a challenge because they're quite different, the systems. So I think a lot of people are watching this with interest, and I think it's probably not unlikely that if this goes well, which we think it will, it seems to be on track, that other countries may follow into the solid soft customer group. So from our perspective, I think it was a mark of acknowledgement that the solid soft reply system certainly is working well. EU Hub then, there was another release of the Hub was deployed to production in June 2023. And I think any of you who are working at OBP level, you will get communications directly from MAHs about the Hub updates. Just moving on then, other parties involved in FMD in Ireland, we have the Department of Health, which is responsible for legislation and policy relating to safety features, where there is scope for national decisions. So one of the areas there would be, for example, the scope of Article 23, which defines parties that don't have to do their own decommissioning and that wholesalers can do it for them. So for example, here in Ireland, GPs don't have to do their own decommissioning of packs they receive from wholesalers, where in other countries, GPs do have to do the decommissioning. The department is also accountable, in fact, the government is accountable to the European Commission for any non-compliance with EU legislation. So you may sometimes hear about the European Commission taking enforcement proceedings against a member state, and that will be, they will be directed at government level. We then have the national competent authorities. So these are the bodies that are responsible for supervising the IMVS and ensuring that all parties, so that would be end users, manufacturers, MAHs, and ourselves, comply with their obligations. So HPRA, as you know, oversees manufacturers, MAHs, wholesaler, and also ourselves. We will at some point have HPRA inspections, and it also leads to follow-up if falsified medicines are identified. PSI then, the pharmacy regulator, Pharmaceutical Society of Ireland, they oversee retail pharmacy businesses and pharmacists. Then within the HSC, they set up an FMD project team. So the HSC Health Service Executive, or Public Health Service, for those of you who are not living here. That project team was responsible for implementation of FMD in all the public health service locations. And they've done a very good job. Like, they have implemented FMD, and they also monitor very closely scanning rates and alerts being generated within the hospitals, and take action to if there's any issues. Looking then, moving on to yourselves, your own responsibilities, obviously you know all of these, but I suppose just to recap, obviously there's the requirement to make sure the packaging has safety features and that you've got approval from the regulatory authority. There's obviously the requirement to register with the NMVO in each country where products are sold, then manufacture serialized packs, register with MAHs then as an onboarding partner and upload the data of those packs to the EU Hub. it's important you only upload the data to the markets where the products are sold. So if you have a license, say a centrally authorised product that is authorised in Ireland, but you don't actually sell the product into the Irish market, please don't upload the data for those packs to the Irish market. There's no need to do that until you start to supply them into this market. Then obviously you need to have procedures in place to manage alerts generated on your own products, i.e. the level 5 alerts that I mentioned before. And these alerts are notified by the IMVS to the OBP. So the OBPs, that part of your business, can log in and see those alerts. In the early days of FMD, we realised a lot of MAHs locally weren't aware that these alerts have been sent to OBPs, but I think that has changed now. So just talking about what wholesalers have to, they're not required to verify all packs that pass through the warehouse, only the following. So all returns that they get back from customers, so that would be from pharmacies, hospitals, other wholesalers that they supply. And then they're also required to verify packs received from any source other than the manufacturer of the MAH or the manufacturer or MAH's designated wholesaler. Now, there can be a level of confusion about who is a designated wholesaler. It is something that is actually set up by the OBP in what's called the product master data for in the system for the particular product. So it's important that you manage your designated wholesaler and you make wholesalers aware who are the designated wholesalers. It is important to note that even though primary distributors are not obliged to check all the packs that are coming in, we know that unless they come from, as I say, sources other than the ones listed there, we know that many do routinely do FMD checks on packs received to good inwards from all sources, and they don't check every pack, but they do samples. We know that manufacturers and MAHs have arrangements with the primary distributors to do these checks just to make sure the data has been uploaded correctly. That's hugely valuable, because if we can identify missing data at this point, it just means by the time the packs are distributed to customers, the data will have been uploaded, and then we don't see alerts at pharmacy or wholesaler level. So if you're getting your primary distributor to do that, that's very much appreciated, because that makes a huge difference in terms of alerts. Wholesalers, obviously, they decommission packs as destroyed, stolen, locked as appropriate. Now, stolen rarely happens, because if you think about it, you have to have details of the serial numbers kept separately because you don't have a pack to scan. They decommission the packs supplied to Article 23 locations. I've already mentioned these. And then finally, they would investigate alerts generated in their own warehouses. And we find particularly the big full-line wholesalers are very good at this. They very quickly pick up if there's alerts been generated in large numbers. Say a scanner stops working and suddenly you have 300 alerts in an hour, they will pick that up and they will let us know. So that all works very smoothly. So from a pharmacy and hospital point of view, so these are the people who supply medicines to the public. They must authenticate the packs prior to supply by scanning the 2D barcode and checking the anti-tampering device. Community pharmacies scan the pack at the time of supplying it to the public. So where hospitals have a little bit more flexibility, they can scan the packs at any time after the pack arrives in the hospital. And typically in Ireland, medicinal products will go into 3 parts of the hospital. So the standard medicinal products will go to the pharmacy. Fluids will often go to stores. Sometimes they go to pharmacy, but often, so IV fluids, they will typically go to stores. And then blood products, so medicinal products that are blood products will often go to the labs. So there will often be 3 decommissioning points in the hospital. If the scan generates an alert, obviously the end user has to take follow-up action, and the pack must be withheld from supply until falsification is ruled out. So that's been the case since our stabilisation period ended last in May 2022. If the pack appears to have been tampered with, pharmacies are instructed not to supply the pack and to report the concern to the HPRA as a suspected quality defect, even if the scan has been fine. So it really is a dual check that's done. It's not just the scan and the alert, it's looking at the anti-tamper device. So where are we now? So I suppose, as I mentioned a moment ago, we ended our stabilisation period, as we call it, the use and learn period, in May 2022. But we've seen a huge amount of progress in that period where things have really settled in well. The weekly end user alert rates have fallen to 0.05% or less. And to put that in perspective, that means 1 alert per every 20,000 transactions in the system. So it's a very low alert rate. It's largely due to the excellent work of end users and MAHs to minimise avoidable alerts. Scanning and decommissioning rates have improved. Now, they're not where they should be, This is something that the PSI, as the pharmacy regulator, is primarily focused on, because we think most of the low scanning activity is taking place in community pharmacy. So they are actively engaged in following up and encouraging people to get scanning. Pharmacy and hospital engagement with IMVO has increased significantly. So we're getting more calls and queries, and people, we're just noticing people are becoming used to using the system. They kind of know themselves when issues arise, what's going on. NMVS alerts usage by pharmacies and hospitals steadily increasing. So this is our alert management system. Now we have about 250 pharmacies with accounts in the system. So it doesn't seem like a lot out of a total of 1,900, but you can actually use the system without having an account. So, that number is going up all the time. Similarly, we have MAHs are using it more and more. Now, it's not where we would like it to be. We've about 50 odd MAHs who are consistently using it to report back to us on alerts. We'd like to see that figure a bit higher. The next thing we've been doing over the last year is continuous communications to pharmacies and hospitals on the most common issues that we've seen in order to help prevent further alerts. So even in the last week, we've just sent out a series of little guidance cards to them. I'll show you an example later on, to, flagging the things that are most likely to be causing alerts these days and reminding them to try and avoid those issues. And then we've also seen continuous improvement of the staff to enhance the user experience. Really, that's very well advanced at this stage. So looking then at our alert rate, so it has been running consistently at 0.05. We get the odd spike, as you can see there, and that could be, we had a spike there up to roughly week 22 and 23 up to 0.25%. If one manufacturer has 4,000 packs that they accidentally decommission twice, that will cause that type of spike. But look, once we know where they are, it's not an issue. Obviously, from a HPRA perspective, if they come in to inspect you and they find multiple repeated spikes, they would start to ask about your process and your procedure. So I think if these happen, it is important that you take action to make sure they don't happen again, and to, see can you improve the process or add more checks in. This, I think, is a very interesting slide. Is we look to see how often do pharmacies get alerts every month, because I think this is probably a better measure of how much inconvenience is FMD causing in terms of alerts that are leading to packs that cannot be supplied to patients. 50% of pharmacies had 0 alerts in the period. 60% had 1 alert or less. And even if we get up to 90%, and 90% of pharmacies had 4 alerts or less. So in reality, once pharmacies get their scanners and their software working properly, and they avoid things like repeat scanning of the same packs, they actually get very few alerts, which is great. So looking at the most common causes in Ireland, the first one are exempt medicinal products. Now, the EMVS is designed that if you scan, say, a pack that comes into Ireland as an exempt medicinal product from France, it should scan fine. Where the problems arise is, the first one is we have seen, particularly those HRT products have been in very short supply over the last year in Ireland. A lot of the products that have been brought in as exempt medicinal products into the country were sourced outside the EU, in Switzerland in particular. They had originally been in the EU, marked as exported going to Switzerland, and now they're coming back into Ireland and they're still marked as exported, and it can't be reversed. So they're actually alerts in, like, could be up to 35% of alerts in a given week. We have issued guidance to pharmacies not to scan these packs in consultation with the HPRA, but it's difficult to remember to scan certain things and not scan other things when you're in a busy dispensary with a multiple item prescription. But we keep messaging on that one. The Brexit effect has obviously been a factor, because there isn't a mandatory requirement to upload data for GB packs to the UK system since Brexit. So what we find is packs sourced from the UK as EMPs or brought into Ireland under batch-specific requests, they will cause alerts where the data isn't uploaded to the UK system. Now, where we see this happen, we do contact the manufacturer, the MAH, and ask nicely, would you mind uploading the data? And most people are very helpful and do that, and it prevents further alerts. But, that is an ongoing issue. We've already seen situations where packs borrowed by pharmacies cause alerts where they were already decommissioned in the lending location. It's something you will expect if they have been lent by a hospital or loaned by a hospital, because the hospital will have decommissioned the goods inwards and may not be able, you have a 10-day window to reverse that. So they may be on that window of the lending the pack. So it is something we're constantly communicating with pharmacists. if you lend a pack to another pharmacy, check to make sure that it's not decommissioned when you send it. We would also advise the pharmacy that gets the pack, do a quick verification scan and check, has it already been decommissioned? Check with the other pharmacy if they've done it, and if they have, then just don't decommission it again, go ahead and supply it without another scan. Alerts due to wholesaler errors, so they do some hospital aggregation. It's a service the wholesalers provide, it's a paid service. We do see some alerts associated with that, and also repeat scanning. Like we had an example a few weeks ago, a wholesaler had to, it was a batch with tens of thousands of packs in it, they had to be decommissioned, and the operator, if you can imagine dealing with that quantity of packs, managed to accidentally repeat the transaction on about 300 of them. So it doesn't stop, but the problem is we, on a good alert week, we're getting 700 alerts. So that would spike our alert rate that week. We do see some MAH procedural errors. We see delays and repeat decommissioning transactions. Interestingly, it's most likely to happen, it seems, with packs being marked as exported. So something to watch out for, just to make sure that there's a real, level of rigor in checking when packs are about to be decommissioned, that it hasn't been done already. Because if you've done it once and you do it again, then you're going to get an alert for every single pack that's scanned the second time. We also see alerts where the HPRA has granted exemptions for packs with incorrect barcode information to ensure continuity of supply. We've had one case recently, it was a cold chain product. They asked the MAH to put a letter with it to say not to decommission the packs because the data was wrong, but unfortunately the packs were put into the fridges, the letters are removed, and we've seen a lot of alerts with those packs. So we've asked, we've discussed this with the HPRA, how to manage these communications, and it's also something yourselves to think about. And it's really important you make us aware of these things happen. Now, next slide. We do an assessment of root causes of alerts every week. Now, until we get definitive confirmation from, say, an end user and MAH, we can't confirm this is what's actually happening, but it certainly is our best assessment of what's going on. And if we take week 13 was a good week, indeed 700 odd alerts. Week 22 was not a good week. There was nearly 5,000 alerts, 4,000 of those were relating to an MAH data issue, and so on. So the ones in white are the ones that would have an impact at pharmacy level, and the ones in green are ones where the pharmacy won't see them, so they don't actually impact on any supply to patients. So what you can see is the software issues, we would have had a release around that time, or 13 went live, and we know there was a couple of pharmacies, there were delays updating their software to take account of the release, and that would have caused some of those alerts. You can see the scanner issues are pretty much gone away now. So those software issues, we would expect to see them starting to fall now, because once we see, kind of in our view, we'd like to see the software issues like a 10 or under in a week. So if we see 73 in a week, like you see there in week 25, we will be looking to see what's going on. Is there a problem with particular software? Is there a problem in a particular location? We would get it sorted out. So what I want to do in the next few slides is talk to you about the IMVO alert management guidance. So basically, the objective of the guidance, and there's a hyperlink there to it, which you can access with slides. So it defines the high-level alert handling process for pharmacies, hospitals, wholesalers, MAHs, and ourselves. So this guidance has been drawn up in consultation with stakeholders, including the HPRA and the PSI. So what we're trying to do here is to make sure that alerts are quickly investigated and closed out if a root cause is found, enabling the pack to be supplied or returned to saleable stock as soon as possible. So if, for example, we know that an alert is due to the fact that a pharmacy has decommissioned a pack twice, that pack is deemed to be perfectly fine to supply because falsification has been ruled out. If you scanned it again, there would be another alert, but we know what the root cause is. And I think this brings me to my next point. The key principle underpinning the guidance is that alert does not mean that a pack is definitely falsified or defective, as alerts can arise due to technical, procedural, or system-related issues. So we look for all of those before we come to the conclusion that we're looking at a falsification. The guidance also describes the process for escalation of an alert as a falsification to the HPRA if no root cause has been found. So the HPRA said to us, they don't want to get involved in the investigation until the MAH will say, yes, we believe this is a definite falsification, and then they will step in. So what's out of scope of the guidance? So it doesn't deal with alerts other than level 5 alerts to potential falsifications. For example, we see a thing called product code unknown alerts or exceptions. These are A1s. So there's A codes and all the different types of alerts. They don't, they're not covered by the guidance because they are managed in a different process. The HPRA internal processes are not covered. Alert prevention activities are not covered in the guidance. And then finally, arrangements relating to credit refund, replacement of packs that cannot be supplied to patients due to an unresolved alert. These matters are outside our remit, HPRA or PSI. So that's a matter for yourselves to discuss with the pharmacy. And typically this will only really arise where the pack needs to be returned for examination. So clearly that pack will not be available again to the pharmacy to use. We have seen some issues with packs decommissioned by pharmacies for a patient who, say, then doesn't collect the prescription, and then the pharmacy tries to send it back to the wholesaler, but it's in a decommissioned state and it may be gone beyond the 10-day window where it can be recommissioned by the pharmacy. So there has been some discussions between wholesalers and pharmacies around the whole question of credit for those packs, because the wholesaler will say, well, we can't sell it, so therefore we can't give you credit for it. Now, we've been asked about those, but that's not something we can get involved in. We have no remit in relation to any of that. So just the process about how alerts are investigated. So when an alert is generated at an end user location, we expect the end user, so that would be the pharmacy, the hospital, the wholesaler involved, and the MAH to initiate simultaneous investigations. From the end user's perspective, they're looking for procedural errors, so things like, has the pack been decommissioned twice? If they're confident that that's what's happened, they document that and they can supply the packs as long as there's no reason to suspect it's falsified. So they take the responsibility for that decision. If there's a technical issue, so if they've ruled out a procedural error, then they'll see, right, is there a problem with the scanner or the software? And often this is where there's a data mismatch between the alert and what's in the pack. And in that situation, if they can fix it, so say, for example, they reconfigure the scanner, they can verify the pack again. And if that's successful, then they can go ahead and supply the pack. Now, it's important to note that while we ask MAHs to investigate alerts, there's certain categories we do not want you to investigate. And it's because these are typically due to end user error. So these are A7, A24s, double decommission, or A68 batch ID mismatch. These are typically due to software problems. So they are rarely due to anything that you would be responsible for. So this advice has been agreed with the HPRA. Now, the only situations in which we investigate A7, A24, A68 is where you were aware that you've caused the alerts due, for example. So you might get a lot of A7s because someone in your company has repeated decommissioning transactions and packs under your control. Or the other situation is where the IMVO, HPRA or end user asks you to investigate such alerts. But otherwise, you can basically set those alerts aside. You don't need to take any action with them, those alerts in the Irish market. Now, for all the other alerts, what you will do is have a look to see, is there any missing data? Is there some problem with the data that's been uploaded? Are there any issues then with the system itself? You obviously have to investigate the alerts generated from your own transactions. Now, as I mentioned already, end users don't see this. So if you accidentally decommission a batch of packs twice, that has no impact whatsoever on end users because those packs are sitting in an MAH warehouse somewhere. What happens next then is, if there's no feedback from either the end user or the MAH within 2 working days, so we've heard nothing from anyone, we step in to see what's going on and to check that the alert has been investigated, if not already done so. And sometimes the case that actually it has been investigated, we just simply haven't been told what's happened. If either an end user or an MAH does not require the assistance we need to ensure that an alert is investigated, then we are required to escalate the matter to the relevant NCA. So, for example, for MAHs, that will mean we will escalate it to the HPRA and it will go to the market compliance section under Kevin O'Donnell's lead. Now, you might say, well, how will the end users know what the issue is? So how do we help them to work out what's going on and get the things sorted out quickly? So what we have done with the end user FMD software providers, we have asked them to include a link from the on-screen alert message in the pharmacy to a help page on our website. And that help page basically assists end users in identifying the root cause for the alert, whether they can fix it and how to do this. And we have, for different types of alerts, different types of advice. So, and the beauty of this arrangement is we can easily modify the guidance on our website without having to go back to the software providers and get them to change anything. And sometimes we just add more information in as we discover other ways that people can identify what's going on. The other thing is we're constantly monitoring the system for large numbers of alerts, unusual patterns of alerts by product. So if we see lots of alerts for a particular product or a particular batch or a particular end user, we will step in straight away. So we don't wait for 2 working days then. We will contact the end user, the MAH or the FMD software provider. So if we see, for example, 10 pharmacies all using the same software provider, all of a sudden having lots of alerts across lots of different products, it kind of points towards a software issue. So in that case, we would probably just go directly to the software provider and ask them to have a look at it. So the idea here is that this will allow issues with large numbers of alerts in a given location or with a particular batch to be quickly identified and resolved with support from us. So our alert management system is actually programmed to send emails to the team here if they see these types of patterns of alerts, and then they step in. So what happens if an alert is not due to an end user scan or software procedural issue? So a root cause has been ruled out on the end user side. So the advice to the end user in that situation is to withhold the pack from stock and quarantine it until either one of 2 things happen. Either the MAH comes back and confirms they've identified the root cause and if possible fixed it. So for example, by uploading data, if missing data is the problem. Or basically the MAH wants to get the pack back for examination because basically everything is ruled out. The possible root causes have all been ruled out and you need to look at the pack. And it's important as MAHs you advise on how the pack is to be returned. So whether you want it sent back in a special return process to the wholesaler or whether you will collect it directly from the pharmacy, it's entirely up to yourselves how you manage that. In the early days of FMD, what we heard from pharmacies in particular was if they got packs with alerts, they were just simply going to send them back to the wholesalers. They weren't saleable, but the HPRA has been very clear that that shouldn't happen. So alerts must be retained in the location where they were scanned and not returned to the wholesaler as part of standard business returns. You have to wait for feedback on the MAH and next steps. So the MAH might say to return it, but they'll actually tell you exactly how to do it. Now, looking then at what the MAH investigates, I've just captured it all in one slide here. So as I've mentioned already, if the alert is generated during an MAH transaction by the hub, it's up to the MAH then to investigate and tell us what the outcome is. If the alert is generated in a pack in an end user location, so the requirement is you check firstly if the alert is due to a data issue. We probably mean is missing data, incorrect data. Hopefully you'll be able to correct it. You may decide you want to see a photo of the pack from the end user if there's no obvious root cause. And sometimes that's enough to tell you the pack is either genuine or alternatively you can identify that the packaging is falsified. I'll talk to you in a moment about how to go about getting that photo. So if you can't find any data issues, the next thing you look to see is there some problem with the EU hub that might have caused the alert, that might have led to the data not being in the system. And the requirement is that you give us feedback in your investigation within 2 working days. Let end user know if the issue was not resolved after 2 days. And it was interesting, it was the HPRA said to us, look, these issues might not be sorted out in 2 days. What we ask is you just at least tell us where things are at and give us regular updates until such time as the matter is resolved. Now, if data, procedural and technical issues have been ruled out, the pack is considered suspected falsification. And this is the point at which you might want to examine the pack. And this is where you tell the end user how to do it. If you cannot confirm that the pack is genuine from this examination, it's considered a confirmed falsification and you need to notify the HPRA ourselves and so on. And we'll make sure that the commission, for example, is notified. If you can see that from a pack photo that the pack is falsified, in that situation, you should ask for the pack to be returned back to you. Now, in the next couple of slides, I'm going to talk to you about NMBS alerts. That's our alert management system. So, an alert management system. So obviously communications during an alert investigation, different things during an alert investigation. So end users, IMVO, we need to talk to each other. We don't necessarily do this directly, but we need to be able to make each other aware of what's going on. If an end user finds a root cause for the alert, the MAH alert says we need to be aware of this so we can stop looking at it. If no end root cause is identified, the end user location, know what the outcome of your investigation is and that the pack is genuine before they supply it. And then obviously if there's no obvious root cause, you need to be able to communicate to request a photo of the pack and or ask for the pack to be returned for examination. So according to the alert management guidance, and this is very much supported by the HPRA, NMBS alerts is the recommended communications tool, as the alternative will significantly slow the speed of investigation. And one of the reasons, for example, email is slow, if you want to communicate with an end user, the way the system has been designed, and this was as a requirement from stakeholders at European level, the MAH is not made aware at any point of the identity of the end user. So if you want to, for example, request a photo of the pack and you don't use NMBS alerts to do that, you have to email us, we have to email the pharmacy, they have to email us the photo, we have to email it back to you. So you can see that's quite an inefficient way of managing things. So just a little bit about NMBS itself. So it's a collaborative tool which facilitates efficient handling of alerts by allowing all relevant parties to manage, track and document alerts, provides real-time information on the status of the alerts based on information entered by the end user, MAH and or IMVO. So any one of us can see information entered by the other party. If you are using the system as an MAH, you won't actually see the identity of the end user, but you will see whatever information they've inputted. We can quickly communicate with each other about an alert while preserving end user anonymity vis-a-vis the MAH, which is a core principle of the EMVS. And it allows everyone to maintain an audit trail of your own actions for inspection purposes. Certainly in IMVO, we use NMBS alerts to document everything we know about alerts. So if, for example, an end user contacts us by phone or email and they give us information, we enter that into NMBS alerts. If we know, for example, a particular batch is come into the country, marked exported, when we see alerts on those packs relating to them being scanned, even though they're already marked as exported, we will actually close all those alerts and give the reason why we're doing that. So it's a web-based application which is available 24/7. The end user can upload a pack photo requested by the MAH. NCAs may also opt to use it. Now, HPRA is not yet doing this. Eventually in time they could. We know in Slovenia they monitor the level of responses by end users and MAHs when alerts are generated. And then just to remind you that the system basically captures level 5 alerts generated by end users. So these are potential falsifications. So these are recorded in NMBS alerts. So in order to access NMBS alerts as an MAH, the first thing what you need to do is set up an account. Basic account is available free of charge, and this allows you to log in to see a list of your own level 5 alerts in the country to which the account relates. So if you want to use the free account option, you need a different account for every country where you're using that uses NMBS alerts. You can report any information you have about the alert. You can also close alerts when the investigation is complete and the root cause is known, not falsified. If you want a premium license, you pay more for that and you pay those fees directly to TCK, which provides NMBS alerts. It gives access to extra features, things like batch level action, multi-level selection, and the ability to see all your alerts in countries where it's an MAH. So you could manage all the different countries through one account. End users then have an additional option of an email link. So when a level 5 is alert, they get an automated email from NMBS alerts with the link to the alert record in NMBS alerts. They don't need an account to do this, and they can just simply click the link and go in. It's a one-time link, and they can also use the link to report information and send the photo. So what we do is we send them a link as soon as the alert is generated. We send them another reminder after 2 days we've heard to investigate this alert. And after a further 4 working days, we will then send them a third email to say, please investigate this alert. Now, just some pointers for yourselves about using NMBS alerts, speed of updates. I think it's really important that you update NMBS alerts as soon as you've identified a root cause for alerts, particularly say, we know the data is missing, we've updated it. I think it's important, particularly for generic companies where there are alternative products provided. If your products are generating an alert and the pharmacy can simply pick another product off the shelf, that's what will happen. So it's important if you can quickly close out alerts and make sure that you're not seen as a manufacturer that sends products out with alerts. So make sure you notify everyone as quickly as possible when you sort things out. Closing bulk alerts, this is just some feedback from the operations team here. If you're using the basic free account, resolve is kind of the phrase used to describe closing alerts. You cannot close bulk alerts, so that's related alerts on the same batch. but we can do this for you. So if you want us to do this, send us an email. I'll give you the email address there with the root cause and the alert IDs of the relevant alerts, or the batch ID where the alerts are on an entire batch, and we'll close those alerts out for you. Very important for the A7, the A24 and the A68. So these are the ones we mentioned before that you shouldn't really be investigating because they are typically end user alerts. Please don't close these alerts and NVS alerts if they've been generated by end users. We see this all the time, these alerts being closed by the manufacturer, because their view is, well, there's nothing at my end, I'm closing them. The problem is the investigation by the end user and or IMVO may be ongoing, and we can't reopen those. So it's important we would please ask you not to do that. Just going to speak briefly about the EAMS, so it's European Alert Management System. So this comprises, and it's all designed around efficient alert management in Europe. Sorry, let me just get rid of that message. It comprises, there's a new AMS hub, and then there are connected NAMs, as they're called, or National Alert Management Systems, and also OBPs are connected to the alert management system. OBPs can access the alert management system via an AMS portal, so that's a web-based portal, and or via an API connection. So that's where you connect your software, your alert management software, directly to the AMS hub software. From what we're aware already, most people are actually using the AMS portal, most OBPs. So what that gives you is, it gives you a single point of access to all of the connected alert management systems. So say there's 10 national alert management systems connected to the AMS hub. If you set up an account in the AMS portal or you create an API connection, you have one login that gives you access to all of those systems. So there's a lot of it, that will make life a lot easier than having to register with each individual national system. So the National Alert Management System, they can operate without being connected to the AMS hub. But being connected, what it does is it allows you to have this one access point instead of having to connect to each one individually. So the European Alert Management System went live on the 9th of February this year. So that was the 5th anniversary of FMD. So it was the 2023, yeah, it was the 4th anniversary of FMD. And Cyprus was the first national alert management system connected. And we're aiming to connect our system before the end of this year. And we'll keep you posted. We'll send out updates on that. So looking at the connected status, we have 2 countries, Slovenia and Cyprus, now in production using that. And we have a number of other countries, Austria, Belgium, Denmark, Germany, Poland, and also France are working on connecting to that. The number of OBPs that's connected is pretty low. So we have 1,212 OBPs not connected in May this year. These are IMVO figures, and 84 are connected. So that needs to improve. But, I think what we're trying to do across Europe is increase the number of OBPs using the system, increase the number of national alert management systems connected to the system. And by having better information flow from MAHs and OBPs, hopefully that will help to encourage end users to make more use of the system. Because if they know when I go into that system, I'll get the latest update from the MAH because they're using the system, then they're also likely to keep coming back to it. I just want to mention Brexit very quickly. It's still unfortunately on the table. We had thought it might have gone away, but it hasn't. So monitoring the impact of Brexit from an FMD perspective is an ongoing priority for ourselves. We have a high reliance in this country on pack source from the UK, particularly to address medicine shortages. It's more challenging due to Brexit, especially when these packs are serialised and the data hasn't been uploaded to the UK NI repository. So now SecureMed UK now operates in Northern Ireland, and it results in more alerts for end users. So we are constantly in discussions with MAHs about aspects of Brexit related to the MBS, and we're also in discussions with the Department of Health and the HPRA about how FMD aspects of Brexit impacts on medicine supply in Ireland. We also work closely on other heavily impacted NMBOs. So these are the ones that, like ourselves, are part of the UK or they share a traditional reliance on packs from the UK, and obviously NI, Malta and Cyprus. So you will be familiar with framework. This was the political agreement reached by the UK and the EU earlier this year, quite a surprise to everyone. And it has a number of measures in place that effectively end the application of FMD in Northern Ireland. So the UK government recently announced that these measures will take effect on the 1st of January 2025. So when you get the slides, if you click on the hyperlink, it brings you directly to the announcement. So from that date, new medicines for the UK market must carry UK only label to be allowed into the UK market. These products may only be sold in the UK and will not, be available in IE or elsewhere in the EU. So that's quite a big development. So now the UK is prohibited from sending any UK packs to any other EU member state. So we have a fairly heavy reliance traditionally on these packs as exempt medicinal products, and also a lot of them are used in BSR situations. This option will be gone after the Windsor framework comes into effect. So while FMD issues will go away in terms of scanning these packs, there's a much bigger issue. There will be no actual packs available. So that is something the Department of Health and the HPRA are really thinking about very closely at the moment. The next piece that the UK government announced recently was that medicines entering Northern Ireland will not display 2D barcodes and serial numbers that are compliant with FMD. So really what we expect is that there won't be, for example, a serial number encoded in the barcode if the barcode stays on, which it probably will. And the expected consequence of this is that the UK system will be disconnected from the EU hub from this date. And it has also been agreed now that anti-tamper devices should remain in all UK medicine packaging. Originally, that was part of the piece that they were to come off, but that's now been clarified. That's not the case. So the assessment of the impact of the Windsor framework from an FMD perspective and required mitigating measures is continuing. So we're working again very closely with MAHs, the other NMVOs, and with the Department of Health and HPRA, and we will keep you updated as information becomes available that's relevant to you. So just very quickly, the ask of MAHs. So it's really important to help us manage alerts efficiently. So please start using NMVS alerts if you're not already doing this. Contact the system provider to set up an account, and there's a hyperlink there to their homepage. Connect to the European Alert Management System, because as I said, the more OBPs use it, the more national systems are connected, the greater it will be used, and it will also encourage more end users to start using it to communicate about alerts. So further information about connecting to the EAMS is available from MAHs, and I've given you links there to a couple of guides that MAHs has published. Help to reduce alerts. So really important to make sure your data has been correctly uploaded. In fact, you're obliged under the delegated regulation to do this, and that it's done on time by scanning one pack per batch before releasing batches to the supply chain, or you can ask your primary wholesaler to do this for you. One thing we want to flag to you, if you send the packs to your primary wholesaler prior to batch release and data uploaded, that sometimes happens. So the packs are received into quarantine in the primary wholesaler here. If you haven't uploaded the data, please make sure you tell them that the data hasn't been uploaded. There's no problem doing that, but just make sure they're aware the data hasn't been uploaded so you don't scan the packs. And again, the HPRA is aware that this practice goes on, and they're fine with it, provided to say people are made aware that the data is not uploaded. If you are receiving large numbers of alerts and batches that you've uploaded to the system and you're kind of surprised about that, we can check for you if the batch is visible in the IMVS. So sometimes data does not get to the IMVS from the hub and needs to be re-uploaded. Obviously, analyze your own transactions to lead to multiple alerts and implement CAPAs to prevent recurrence. Help to resolve alerts quickly, correct any data errors as soon as you become aware of them when you start to see A2 or A3 alerts at end user locations, and then use NMVS alerts to inform ourselves and the end user if you've identified the root causes. And I've already covered some of the points there about delayed responses and not closing certain categories. If not already done, please tell us who your single point of contact is for alerts in your backup spot. It's really important to use at least one generic email address for one of these contacts. Like we had an example just this week where someone had been on long-term sick leave, but nobody grasped that they were actually our contact point for alerts. We had actually been trying to get in touch with them about alerts when we were getting no response. So please use some sort of a generic email address so that's accessed while it's constantly monitored. Notify us immediately if the HPRA approves a batch-specific request where there's likely to be an FMD impact. So, for example, there's an error in barcode data and you're going to continue to supply those packs because those packs will generate alerts if they're scanned. So we need to know this. And again, a similar thing if you get some sort of an exemption. Make sure that the product name in the system matches what's on the pack. We see frequently mismatches in name, form, and strength, and it causes confusion for end users because what appears on the screen in the alert message doesn't match what's written in the pack. And finally, then only mark a batch as recalled in the system if the batch has been recalled to pharmacy level. Do not mark it as recalled if the recall is only going to wholesaler level, which happens in about 15% of recalls in Ireland, as this will lead to pack recalled warnings in pharmacies and hospitals where the pack is not recalled. So just very briefly, support available from ourselves. Phone number, the email, the service desk is open 8 to 8 Monday to Friday, 9 to 6 on Saturday, and 11 to 6 the weekends. If you want to contact us about an alert, use NMBS alerts or email alertsupport@imvo.ie. If you have any account registration or invoice queries, use MAH@imvo.ie. Now, those two email addresses are not managed by the service centre. They're monitored during business hours only. So if you have an urgent out of hours issue, please phone or email the service desk. We have our website, we have FAQs, we have an information registering as an MAH, we have guidance videos available, including NMBS alerts on our website. If you want to check the live IMVS status, it's available at the link there. We also run bespoke support sessions for pharmacies by phone, Zoom or Teams, and we can do that for any MAHs who are interested. And then there's some more information. So we post on LinkedIn, on Twitter. Thanks for the HP the European Commission Q&A document. So just very briefly meet the team. Obviously you know who I am. Colin McNamee is our operations manager. Ita Gordon is our IT manager. Lorraine Leahy is our quality manager. Sarah, you've met there at the start of the call, our admin and communications executive. And then we have, if you're managing alerts, you'll be familiar with Paul and Guilherme. They handle a lot of the day-to-day stuff with alerts, where Sarah will handle all your MAH account registration invoice queries. We have photos there, I think, for everyone except Ita. And I think that's it. So I'm going to stop sharing and we'll stop the recording. And I see there's a couple of questions in the chat, so we'll get to those fairly quickly. Or Sarah